I've been a professional photographer here in Seattle for about 10 years, but it wasn't always easy. In fact, when I first started out, I made 5 pretty big mistakes that I learned really fast from. So today I'm going to tell you about those 5 mistakes and give you some tips about how to avoid them yourself. Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Susie with Gemini Connect. I'm a photographer here in Seattle specializing in corporate events, real estate, food photography, and travel and lifestyle photography. I'm a self-taught photographer, so everything from how to use a camera to how to make money with that camera, I learned by doing. But the thing is, when you're starting out and doing your own thing and you don't have a mentor or a coach, then you're gonna make mistakes. And the biggest thing that separates you from failure is learning from those mistakes and doing your best to not repeat them. So mistake number 1 that I made was relying too much on gear, or thinking that I needed specific gear to take professional photos. Now, of course, you do need a baseline of gear such as a camera and lens and a computer to process those images, but beyond that, anything else is all extra. And if you do invest in extra gear or rent it for a photo shoot, then make sure that you know how to use it, because going along with that first mistake was one of my first photo shoots ever, which was for a big restaurant chain. And they had seen my work before, so they knew that I could take good food photos. But I got all up in my head and I thought, hey, this is my very first food photo shoot. I'm gonna need lighting, because that's what every professional photographer uses when they're doing food photos. So I went to my local camera store, rented all these lights, played with them a little bit so that I basically knew how to use them, and then went to my photo shoot. I failed that photo shoot pretty badly. I mean, I got my shots, but I was really embarrassed by them. I can't even look at them today because they were pretty awful. And part of the reason that I failed was that I used gear that I wasn't 100% certain that I knew how to use. And being that it was my first professional photo shoot, I had to work up my lights, work up my camera settings, deal with the client. It was a lot of new things at once, and so having new gear that I didn't really know how to use just added to the stress. And so my advice is use the gear that you are comfortable with. If you were hired to do a photo shoot, hopefully your client has looked at your work, they've looked at your Instagram page, your portfolio, wherever you have your photos, and they know that you can take those photos. So whatever you did to make those photos, use that when you're doing a professional photo shoot. Now, I'm not saying don't learn new things. You should absolutely learn how to use new gear and learn how to do new techniques, but don't do that at a paid photo shoot. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of practice and that you're 100% comfortable in case that gear malfunctions, and that you can focus to make sure that you can produce the best images you possibly can. Mistake number 2 that I made was not managing client expectations. So before a photo shoot, you should absolutely talk to your client and make sure that you understand what it is that they expect from you. Ask them for a mood board, ask them for a Pinterest, ask them for photos from previous photo shoots that they really liked and photos that they didn't like, and ask them why. Make sure that you really understand what kind of style they're going for, and that is a style that you can replicate. Now, this is super key in a day of Instagram and websites and all kinds of social platforms, because as you may or may not know, the photos that you put on Instagram have a very distinct style than your typical menu photos. And so, yeah, I'm speaking mostly about restaurant photography because I feel like that's where this line really gets fuzzy sometimes about what style of photos that your client wants. And so asking for examples or just anything you need to make sure that you know the style that your client is expecting from you is really helpful, and making sure that you come prepared and that your client knows exactly what you're going to deliver to them. Mistake number 3 kind of goes in hand with mistake number 2, which was I did not show my photos to the client as I was taking them. Now, this can be really unnerving, especially for a first photo shoot, but it's really important because it helps manage client expectations and it helps them feel more involved. So piece number 1 is that you want to make sure that there's going to be someone on site who can look at your work and kind of give you some guidance as you're taking the photos. This is usually a PR person, or maybe a marketing person, or a executive assistant. Just make sure that you have someone there who knows what they're looking for, who can look at your photos as you're taking them and give you feedback as you go. Now, this doesn't mean that they are going to be involved at every step of the process. You don't have to show them every single image, but at least as you're getting started, or if you're uncertain about, am I taking the photos that the client wants, then turn to your point of contact and ask them directly. This saves you a lot of time in post-processing and going back and forth afterward if you have someone there who can help give you feedback and make sure that you're on the right track and doing the best job that you can. In terms of how to show those images to your client, you can just have your camera there and show them the back of your screen after you take some images, or you can even shoot tethered, which is connecting your camera to a laptop or an iPad or your phone and seeing the photos live as you shoot them. Shooting tethered is something that you probably want to arrange ahead of time. If you're doing a really big budget project or something that you feel like the client is asking you a lot of questions and you really want to make sure that you're getting the photos right on site, then you absolutely want to try to shoot tethered or come prepared to do that. Mistake number 4. I did not know how to give constructive feedback as I was on site taking photos. A lot of times you can just look at an image and you know that there's something wrong. You know that just for whatever reason that the photo doesn't look right or feel right, and this is a skill that you get the more that you shoot, of just being able to dissect what is it that's wrong with the image and how do I fix it. This is a skill that is super important today because cameras are cheap and the knowledge of how to shoot photos is very accessible, and as a result there's a lot of competition. So to be a really successful photographer in today's industry, it's really important to not only know how to take a good image, but also to work with your client to improve those images as you're shooting and just be able to add value in ways that set you apart from your competition. A good example was a menu shoot that I just did earlier today. I was shooting a piece of salmon and it had, some mashed potatoes and some asparagus. And as I was shooting the dish, which was plated by the chef, and the chef did a wonderful job, salmon looked amazing, but there was just something visually not right with the photo. And it really came down to the fact that the mashed potatoes were just hiding behind that salmon, and we just needed to pull the mashed potatoes out a little bit so we could see everything on the plate. And so I told my client that, and we took the dish back to the chef, showed him the image, and he made an adjustment, and we got a much better photo as a result of taking a few extra seconds to fix that dish. And that ability to work with my client and give them feedback and make a better image is something that I've just learned by doing. So you'll get more comfortable doing this the more that you shoot, but it's something that you definitely want to work on. And mistake number 5 is I took things too personally. And this is something that I still struggle with, but I've gotten much better at it. But as photographers, I don't think it's unusual to feel really invested in your work because you are not only a professional image maker, but you're also a creative or even an artist. But as you start to get paid for your work, it's really important to understand that the photos you create are not just creative expressions, but a lot of times they're going to be marketing materials. As a result, it's really important to be able to separate yourself from your work and understand that your client may just have a different perspective. I'll give you another example. Today I was doing a menu shoot for a pretty big restaurant chain and working with my client, and sometimes I would take some photos, show her the images, and she would give me some not so positive feedback. At first I was like, oh, is it the lighting? Is it, my composition? Is the exposure too bright? Like, what is it? But the more that we talked about it, the more I realized it really had nothing to do with my camera settings. It had to do with the fact that the piece of fish we were shooting had a little crack in the center and it just didn't look appealing. So that's an example of how you can get negative feedback from a client and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you as a photographer. Sometimes it's your subject just not looking as good as it could. And so that's another reason why you really want to make sure that your client is there, or you have someone there to give you feedback as you go, because they're looking for things that are not related to camera settings and technique that are really important to them. Alright, so there you have it. 5 mistakes that I made when I was first starting out as a professional photographer, and those are just a few of many. I can sit here and probably think of a lot more. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below, let me know if you want more videos like this, because I can definitely give you more examples of mistakes that I made and how I've learned from them. But yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope that it helps you become a better photographer and avoid some of the mistakes that I made when I was first starting out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.